Shalom, shalom, peace, peace. I want to thank you guys for joining our class today. I'm Jadiel from the Fourth Angels Learning Center. And today we're going to be discussing kind of a defending Paul concept, but this idea kind of broadens, is pretty broad as far as where this becomes an issue. This idea becomes an issue in multiple places. So we're going to talk about whether or not this idea of the grafting in of the nations of the world is a foreign concept. Let me say that again. The grafting in of the nations of the world, whether it's a foreign concept or whether it's a concept that existed with the prophets and with the Torah. Is Paul making something up? So we're going to see where this idea of the grafting in comes from with Paul, and we're going to try to see if we can defend it with the scriptures. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get right into it. All right. So we're in Romans chapter 11. And we're going to start with verse 11. Verse 11 of Romans chapter 11. And it says, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. But rather through their fall, salvation is come unto the nations for to provoke them to jealousy. So this one statement here is expressing the contrast. This people did not fall to be cut off. This people fell in order to open it up to allow the nations to provoke them. This is not even an old concept of itself. This was mentioned in the book of Hosea, which we're going to look at in a second, the prophet Hosea. It says, now, if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them, the riches of the nations, how much more their fullness? How much more their fullness? Meaning that if they fall and it brought so much opportunity for the world and for the nations to actually come in, how much more does Yah have to give if his people is completely repentant, completely restored? So it says, for I speak to you nations, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the nations, I magnify my office. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them that are of my flesh, and I might save some of them. So he's speaking of this to the nations so he can assist in provoking those who were related to him. That's what it means by that I may provoke to emulation them that are of my flesh. This statement here is an emphasis on blood relations. So he wants to basically speak to the Gentiles so he can provoke his relatives. Let's continue to read this. It says, for if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root is holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches were broken off, and you, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and with them partake of the root and the fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches, but if you boast, you bear not the root, but the root you. You will say then, the branches, it says, you will say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off. They were not broken off for the main purpose of grafting in the nations. We're going to see that there was always an opportunity for the nations to be grafted in. And I'm going to point that out in the Torah and the prophets. It says that you stand by faith, be not high-minded. Don't get caught up. Don't get caught up with yourself that they were cut off just for you. They were cut off for a specific reason. And Paul mentions that. It says, for if Elohim spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also not spare you. Behold, therefore, the goodness and the severity of Elohim. On them which fell, severity, but toward you, goodness. If you continue in his goodness. Otherwise, you also shall be cut off. See, no partiality. They also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. So it's talking about the natural branches or the natural blood relatives of Israel. If they abide not still in unbelief, meaning if they don't stay as unbelievers, if they accept the word, accept the truth, they will be grafted back in. And then it says here, for Elohim is able to graft them in again. And it says, for if you were cut out, now here's where it shows proof that this is other nations. You were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree. So you notice the two different olive trees, right? You were a part of another olive tree that wasn't naturally connected to this olive tree. But he was able to graft you from that olive tree and connect you to another olive tree. How much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted back into their own olive trees? So it's showing the difference between the nations and the Israelites by blood. And he's saying that those nations, which were a part of other nations, were then disconnected from those nations and now placed in the midst or part of this nation. How much more of those people who originated in this particular nation, Yah's nation, the ones that were cut out of Yah's nation because of their unbelief, how much more is Yah able to graft in those who were cut out of their own nation back in to the nation? All right. So I think this is extremely important for us to get, because there's so many doctrines, so many teachings going around. The nations is Israelites dispersed. If Israelites dispersed is the Gentiles or the other nations because they're in those nations, which doesn't make sense at all. Why would he refer to his brethren? Because remember, Paul is from the tribe of Benjamin. So why would he refer to other nations as being, or his brothers, his relatives as being a part of a different tree? And then the people who were cut off at that place, which were the people, the Yahudim, the people from the tribe of Judah, Levi, and some Benjamites. Those were the people that occupied Jerusalem when the time of Messiah came. So Paul is talking about Israelites according to the flesh. He's saying that those who were natural branches to Israel can be grafted back in. Why would he not refer to the other 10 tribes or the dispersed Israelites as natural branches if they are naturally relatives to Israel? No, these were totally different nations of people who are a part of different cultures and different families. They would denounce that their own culture and join Yah's nation. Yah's nation, of course, would incorporate them following Torah, abiding by the law, statutes, and commandments. So let me show a couple instances in which the prophets definitely supported Paul in this idea, but that also the nations were being grafted in long before Paul mentioned the grafting. Israelites were being cut off long before Messiah came. we know that because of their unbelief in the wilderness, many Israelites were cut off from the nation because of their not only their disobedience, but their aggression towards the prophets. Even their aggression towards Moses got many Israelites cut off from the nation. We even see in the Day of Atonement that if you have not afflicted your soul, you will be cut off from your people. So there's many instances in which there's a cutting off from the people. So let's see if there's many instances in which there's a grafting in as well. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 56. Now, Isaiah chapter 56, we're looking in the very beginning of the chapter. It says here, looking at verse 1, thus saith Yahuwah, keep you judgment and do justice, for my salvation is near. My salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. Blessed is the man that does this, and the son of man that lays hold on it, that keeps the Shabbat from polluting it, and keeps his hand from doing any evil. Neither let the son of the stranger that joined himself to yahuah. You notice the emphasis, joined himself to yahuah. By joining himself to yahuah, you would be a part of his nation. It's the relationship with yahuah that makes you a part of the nation. Being a part of the nation does not give you a relationship with yahuah, but being with yahuah gives you a part in the nation. So he's saying those strangers or those foreigners, let's look at what this word means in the Hebrew. The word stranger here is nakar, which means foreign, heathendom, alien, strange, right? Don't let the son of the stranger that joined himself to Yah speak this right here. Yahuwah have utterly separated me from his people. He says, neither let the son of the stranger say this. Don't let the son of the stranger say that Yah has utterly separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. For thus saith Yahuwah, this is Yahuwah speaking, unto the eunuchs that keep my Shabbat and choose the things that please me and take hold of my covenant, even to them will I give in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. Now let's focus on the foreigner. Also, the sons of the stranger that join themselves to Yahuwah, to serve him, to love the name of Yahuwah, to be his servants. Everyone that keeps the Shabbat from polluting it and take hold of my covenant. This is the type of foreigner we're talking about. We're not just talking about any person from any nation that does anything. No, we're talking about a foreigner that joins himself with Yah, serves him, loves his name, is his servant, keeps his commandments, his covenant, his Shabbats. It says, even them will I bring to my holy mountain. Make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. Yahuwah Elohim, which gathers the outcasts of Israel, says, yet will I gather others to him beside those that are gathered unto him. So beside Israel that is gathered to him, I will gather others. This is quite clear. The prophet Isaiah is saying this very clear, that these individuals from foreigners, those foreigners who have been sojourners with Yah's nation and Yah's people, not to think in his mind that he's separate from his people. He is Israel. Speaking of that, let's go to Exodus chapter 12 talking about the Passover. This definitely is talking about the foreigners. There's no way about it. All 12 tribes, they're not even dispersed. All 12 tribes is in Egypt. All 12 sons was in Egypt. So we're going to look at what it says here. It says here, a foreigner and a hired servant shall not eat thereof, referring to the Passover. It says, in one house shall it be eaten, and you shall carry it forth out of the flesh, abroad out of the house, neither shall you break a bone of it. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. Now watch this. When a stranger that sojourns with you wants to keep the Passover to yahuah, let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it. If a stranger, a sojourner with you, let him come near and keep it. He shall be as one born in the land. For no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourns among you. Thus did all the children of Israel. So they did it. Now remember, when they left Egypt, there was a mixed multitude of strangers, a mixed multitude of other nations. I mean, we even see Moses marrying an Ethiopian woman, which Ethiopia comes from the line of Cush, which is a Hamite, comes from the lineage of Ham. So we see him marrying the daughters of Ham. So we clearly see that the nations are, of course, there's certain stipulations. You can't just be anybody and just want to come in and just do whatever you want to do. That's not how it works. You have to be dedicated to serving Yahuwah, keeping his covenant, keeping his statutes and commandments, and entering into that nation, entering into that culture. You understand? So let's look at an example. This is a very strong example. We're going to look at a little example, if first, and then we're going to go to a major example. Let's look at let's go to 1 Kings chapter 17. I want us to analyze this first verse here. It says, in Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, as Yahuwah Elohim of Israel lives, before of whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these days, but according to my word. So, and then it says, and the word of Yahuwah came to him, saying, get thee hence and turn you eastward and hide yourself by the brook of Kerit that is before Jordan. So we see that Elijah is a prophet. He's being spoken to by Yahuwah. We see here. He's went to go speak to the king, King Ahab. And his identity is constantly referred to as the Tishbite. So what is Tishbite? The Tishbite is a location, right? It's called Tishbe. Tishbe is located by Gilead. Gilead is on I would say, the east side of the Jordan River. It's in Israel area, the Samaria area. So this is where Tishbe was, according to this. The inhabitants of Gilead had many different people from different nations. Let's see what this word inhabitants is supposed to say. It says, Tishbe. Sorry. So Meno, which means from the part And then it says here, citizens, the native citizens of this area, it says they were temporary, they were lodgers, they were resident alien, foreigner, sojourner, stranger. Tashab. Let's see if we could look at it a little bit more closer. There we go. A dweller. A native, it says a native citizen, right? A person who lived there and was a citizen, meaning like it could be any, like a resident alien, a person who was a foreigner but lived there, foreigner, sojourner, stranger, right? Is Tashab is usually interpreted as strangers, foreigners, inhabitants, strangers, mostly sojourners, just people who were there not permanently, right? So Elijah was a Tishbite who was of the foreigners, strangers, temporary sojourners of Gilead. He was not an Israelite according to this. Now, okay, if we don't want to look at this, we'll look at a very, very strong example. That example is with brother Caleb. All right. So we're going to look at Caleb is in Numbers chapter 13, right? Caleb was one of the generals of the Israelite army. He was there before they left Egypt. He led the armies of Israel through Canaan with Joshua. And according to Numbers chapter 13, you're going to see verse 6, he was considered from the tribe of Judah. So this chapter is talking about the men that he sent into Canaan to do a quick search as to how they was going to go about taking over Canaan. So Numbers chapter 13, verse 6 refers to Caleb, the son of Jephthah. We're gonna definitely analyze who Jephthah is. It says that he's from the tribe of Judah. Caleb, the son of Jephthah, right? Now, I don't want you to get confused, so I'm gonna take it kind of semi-slow. Caleb, the son of Jephthah, right? The son of Jephthah. Let's look at this. Who is Jephthah? Let's take a look a little bit more every time it references Jephthah. Let's go to First Chronicles, chapter 4. We're going to look at verse 15. It says, and the sons of Caleb, the son of Jephthah, Iru, Elah, Naam, and the sons of Elah, even Kenaz. All right. Very interesting that you see Kenaz. So let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to Numbers. Let's go to Numbers 32. Remember, we're looking at for Jephthah, referencing to Jephthah, right? Numbers chapter 32, verse 11 and 12. It says, surely none of the men that came up out of Egypt from 20 years old and upward shall see the land which I swear unto Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, because they have not entirely followed me. Let me stop for a second. Remember, all the men that came out of Egypt, it was a mixed multitude. Before they left Egypt, we read it in Exodus chapter 12. Before they left Egypt, all those who were foreigners that sojourned with Israel circumcised themselves and they partook in the Passover. So, and then they started to keep the Torah, and they had one law and they had one Elohim, and they were considered Israel. So he's saying everybody that was in Egypt that came out, no one gave their heart to Yah entirely. And then it says, except Caleb, the son of Jephthah, the Kenizzite, and Joshua, the son of Nun, because they entirely followed Yahuah. Now look at what it called Jephthah. It said Jephthah, the Kenizzite. Jephthah, the Kenizzite. Where do we see Kenizzites? Where do we locate Kenizzites? So let's go to Genesis chapter 15. So Genesis chapter 15, Yah is talking to Abraham and he's giving him the covenant. And he's telling Abraham right here, we see in verse 18, in the same day, Yahuwah made a covenant with Abraham, saying, unto your seed here, I give in this land from the river Egypt unto the great river and the river Euphrates. Listen, look at the nations that's located in this land that will be driven out. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites. We know the Hittites is Uriah. Uriah was a soldier in the Israelite army. You know, that's Bathsheba. That's the man that David killed so he could take his wife. The Hittite, Uriah the Hittite. It says the Perizzites, the Rephaims, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. But I want to focus on the Kenizzites. Let's focus on the Kenizzites. Let's see what it says. It says Caleb's father was a Kenizzite, right? So it says here, let's see what that says. Let's make it a little bit larger. There we go. Kenizzites, Kenizzite, descendant of Kenaz. Descendant of Kenaz. Kenaz, it says here, name of an Edomite. Two Israelites. The two Israelites were Caleb's sons, but guess what? We're going back. Remember, First Chronicles chapter 4 talked about Caleb's sons. He named one of his grandsons Kenaz, or one of his sons Kenaz. But his father is a Kenizzite, meaning that his father is from someone named Kenaz. This is before going into Canaan. This is before the Exodus. This is before, this is Genesis chapter 15. So Kenizzite is a Canaanite, a person living in Canaan that had to be driven out so Israel can take over. So let's go see, who is Kenaz? Who are the Kenizzites? Who is Kenaz? Let's go to Genesis chapter 36. Genesis chapter 36. Look at what it says here in 15 and 16. These are the dukes of the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn son of Esau, is Duke Teman, Duke Omar, Duke Zepho, and Duke Kenaz. Duke Kenaz. These are the dukes that came out of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These were Edomite. Kenaz is an Edomite, and his children, Jephthah, was Caleb's father. Jephthah, a Kenizzite. So why in the world, let's go back here. Why in the world did Numbers 13, verse 6, say that Caleb was from the tribe of Judah? Well, just like we were talking earlier about being grafted in is a real thing that has always been happening, just like we read in Isaiah 56. The prophet said that they can enter into the covenant. They can have a better name than a son and a daughter, and they will definitely receive an inheritance. But let's look at where it says that. Let's go to Ezekiel. Let's go to Ezekiel 47. Ezekiel 47, we're looking at verse 21 to 23. Look at what it says, guys. It says, so you shall divide this land, talking about the land of Canaan, according to the 12 tribes of Israel, right? This is what Joshua did when he went into Canaan. He divided the land according to the inheritance for the 12 tribes. It says, and it shall come to pass, you shall divide the lot of the inheritance unto you. And look what it says. And to the strangers that sojourn among you, the ones that beget children among you. Jephthah, he'd been there. Jephthah the Kenizzite, remember, he was with Israel, and he had a son named Caleb among the Israelites. It says, and they shall be unto you as born in the country among the children of Israel. Remember, we just read this in Exodus chapter Exodus chapter 12. This is Ezekiel, the prophet during the captivity of Babylon. It says, they shall have inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel. So if they were dispersed of the tribes of Israel, why is he saying that they shall have inheritance among the tribes of Israel? Verse 23 says, it shall come to pass that in what tribe the stranger sojourns, there shall you give him an inheritance. Whatever tribe the sojourner is a part of, they will become a part of that tribe's inheritance. They will receive an inheritance with that tribe that they sojourn with. They basically were grafted in. So I hope that this was quite clear. So we see Caleb being the son of Jephthah, Jephthah the Kenizzite. We saw that Kenizzites is from the lineage of Kenaz, which is Esau's son. So he's an Edomite. So Caleb is an Edomite, and he was allowed to be the leader of the tribe of Judah. It even called him a part of Judah. We saw in Ezekiel 47 that he basically, those who sojourn with whatever tribe they're in, when their tribe receives their inheritance, the stranger that sojourns with them will receive an inheritance as well with them. We saw Isaiah 56 saying that those who are strangers, don't say that you are separate from his people. Don't say I am separate from Yahuwah's people. That's not the case. You receive an inheritance, you receive a blessing, just like they receive a blessing. We saw the grafting in has always been allowed in Exodus chapter 12. That Yah said if anybody wants to come in, they have to be circumcised in order to actually keep or prepare or offer the sacrifice of the Passover. Now, Passover was a sacrifice, which is why when they came in, they had to be circumcised in order to perform that sacrifice and that sacrificial meal as well. So keep that in mind. But we clearly see that the grafting in has always existed. So Paul is not making something new, and nor is the nations referred to dispersed Israelites. That's ridiculous. So I hope that this was edifying. I hope that if there's any other questions, please let us know. We'll love to kind of reiterate certain things, answer certain questions that will basically touch on what seems to be conflicting with this understanding. Because I noticed that a lot of doctrine is coming out of just this whole idea of not being able to graft in the nations and all these other things. So please let us know. We'll be happy to have conversations, a dialogue, even make new videos in response to some of the questions that comes up. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this was edifying. I hope that Yah blesses you guys. Shalom, everyone. See you in the next class. Shalom, shalom. Thank you guys for joining our study today. I hope that it was edifying. And if you want to support this ministry, you can support us on 4alc.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube page. Click the like button and the notification bell. I hope to see you guys on the next study. Shalom, guys.